The slap wasn't the shocking part. It was my grandfather's tiny smile, the one he saved for a finished game. "Interesting," he said, and quietly ordered dessert. 48 hours later, my accounts were frozen. The building was rezoned, and the overlooked cameras had flipped the entire board. My name is Leslie Burke. Sunday afternoons in my office at Echelon Properties are a ritual. They are my armor against the week to come. The world sees the glass towers, the ribbon cuttings, the name on the glossy magazine covers. But I see the mortar. I see the load-bearing walls, the tenant covenants, the precise, unglamorous math that makes it all stand. This Sunday was no different. The Riverton light, thick and gold, cut across my desk, illuminating the file for Mariner House at 318 Slate Street. It was my flagship, my declaration. Not just a building, but a philosophy rendered in steel and reclaimed brick. I was reviewing the legacy tenants, the ones from before my acquisition, ensuring their transitions to the new building standards were seamless. Mrs. Petrova, apartment 4B, her lease notes were in my own handwriting. The silence of the fourth floor was absolute, broken only by the slide of heavy paper. Then, the vibration. My phone, screen down on the blotter, a single buzz, then another, and another, a barrage. I resist the urge to check my phone during these sessions. It is a distraction from the deep work. But the sheer volume was an alarm bell. I flipped it over. The screen was a sea of notifications from the Rowan family group chat, a digital space I kept muted and archived, a polite fiction I maintained for my father's sake. Now, it was exploding. I tapped it open. My blood did not run cold. It solidified. The first image was Marla, my stepmother. She was standing in the lobby of Mariner House, one hand on her hip, the other pointing dramatically at the mezzanine. Her smile was wide, predatory, aimed at the camera. The caption, from her: "The new headquarters for Rowan Legacy Planning. Perfect, don't you think?" My thumb scrolled. Numb. The next photo. Dylan, her son, my stepbrother. He was in what I knew to be the unfinished commercial space on the ground floor, the one I had just secured a lease for with a high-end chocolatier. He had a tape measure extended, holding it against a wall. His caption: "My new studio space is going to be massive." Then, the aunts, my father's sisters, drawn into Marla's orbit by the scent of money they never earned. They were posing, giggling, holding a rolled-up set of my own architectural plans, using a tape measure as a makeshift prop. Champagne flutes dangled from their fingers. In the background, clearly, was the penthouse. My penthouse, unoccupied, waiting for final fixtures. They were carving it up. They were touring my flagship property like a foreclosure, like a prize to be divided. I stood. The chair scraped back, a harsh, ugly sound in the quiet. My first call was not to my lawyers. It was to the building. I speed-dialed the front desk, but my hand was shaking, and I mistapped. I took a breath. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4. My own voice in my head, the discipline I had drilled into myself. I dialed again. Mariner House, front desk, Quinn speaking. "Quinn, this is Leslie Burke." His voice, usually so unflappable, cracked. "Ms. Burke, I wasn't expecting, good afternoon." "Quinn, why is Marla Rowan in my building?" Silence. Then, a rush of air, a confession. "Ms. Burke, I'm so sorry. She arrived about an hour ago, with a group. She had paperwork. Ms. Burke, an interim management file. It looked official. It had the old Echelon seal. The first one you used." The file, a chill, sharp and precise, lanced through me. I knew exactly what he was talking about. A 2-page document from my first year, when Echelon was just me and a laptop in a shared office space. I had needed a small, $10,000 bridge loan from my father to secure a bond. My father, trusting as ever, had Marla co-sign to keep an eye on things. The price of that $10,000 was this exact document. giving Marla temporary management authority only if I defaulted. I had paid back that $10,000 with interest. 6 months later, and the first thing I did, the very first, was have my new, real lawyer, a junior associate named Elijah North, draft a termination and release. I had it notarized. Marla had signed it, bored, in the lobby of a bank, probably annoyed I had interrupted her schedule. I still had the original. It was in a fireproof safe in my home office, and a digitized copy was in my most secure cloud vault. That document she was waving around was void. It was less than useless. It was a ghost, and she was using it to haunt me. "Quinn," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "that document is void. It has been for almost a decade. You have given unauthorized access to my property." She said it was a family matter, a surprise consolidation, that you knew all about it. They brought a banner. Ms. Burke, they're serving champagne. A banner. The cheap theatricality of it all made me want to laugh, or scream. "Quinn, listen to me very carefully. You will go to the elevator bank. You will place all guest elevators on security hold. No one goes up, no one goes down, until I get there. Do you understand me?" "Yes, Ms. Burke, but what do I tell them?" "You tell them nothing. You are experiencing a systems error. I am on my way." I hung up. My next call was to Elijah North. He was no longer a junior associate. He was the North in Sable and North, and he was on retainer for exactly this kind of moment. He picked up on the second ring. "Leslie." "Elijah, it's Marla. She's at Mariner House. She's using the voided interim management agreement from year 1. She has a crowd with her, and she's claiming ownership." There was no sigh. No, "Are you serious?" Just the rustle of what I pictured was a suit jacket being put on. "I'm leaving my house now. I'll pull the original termination file from the digital archive and have a hard copy with me. Meet me there." "I'll be there in 10, I said. "Leslie," he said, just before I hung up, "call your security lead." "Already on it." I hung up and sent a text to my head of security, a retired detective named Sal, Mariner House, Code Red, Marla Rowan, unauthorized access. I'm en route. Hold elevators. No one leaves. His reply was instantaneous. Understood. I did not grab a coat. I grabbed my keys, my access card, and my briefcase. The drive to Mariner House was 10 minutes. 10 minutes of controlled breathing. 10 minutes of pushing down the hot, primal rage of a child and focusing the cold, adult fury of a CEO. This was not a family squabble. This was a corporate invasion. This was not about a penthouse. It was about precedent. Marla had never understood the difference. She saw Echelon as a magic purse, an extension of the Rowan family name, something she was entitled to by marriage. She could not comprehend that I had built it, brick by brick, not with Rowan money, that $10,000 had been the last and only cent I ever took, but with my own sleepless nights, my own credit lines, my own reputation. The quiet, tree-lined streets of Riverton gave way to the steel and glass canyon of downtown. I pulled into my private spot in the garage beneath Mariner House, the tires chirping in the silence. Sal was waiting for me at the elevator. "They're in the main lobby. Ms. Burke," he said, his face a mask of professional displeasure. "My team is on the floor, but it's a party." "Quinn held the elevators?" "Yes, they think it's a glitch." "Good. Elijah North is on his way. He is to be brought directly to me, wherever I am." "Got it. What are your orders?" "Containment. No one leaves with anything. No one accesses the tenant floors or the server rooms. We are a private property owner dealing with trespassers. Act accordingly. Body cams on." "Already on, boss." The elevator doors opened not onto the lobby, but to the back-of-house corridor that led to my management office. I wanted to see the stage before I stepped onto it. I walked down the hall, my heels clicking on the polished concrete. I could hear them before I saw them. Laughter, clinking glasses, a low, smug murmur. I pushed open the door to the lobby, and I stopped. It was worse than the pictures. The first thing I saw was the banner. It was strung between two marble pillars, right over the main reception desk. Rowan Family Legacy Planning. It was vinyl. The kind of thing you get printed in an hour. It looked cheap, absurd, a plastic sticker on a masterpiece. My reception desk, usually pristine, was covered in flutes of champagne. A hired cater waiter, someone I did not employ, was pouring. There were at least 30 people, Marla's friends, a few distant cousins I had not seen since my father's wedding, and then I saw him, a small gray man in a poorly fitted suit, standing by the scale model of the building, scribbling on a legal pad, a family accountant, as Quinn had said. He was looking at my building as if he were appraising livestock. My team, Sal's team, was positioned by the elevators, looking stoic and miserable. Marla was holding court by the fireplace, a glass in her hand, regaling her audience. Dylan was by the main entrance, talking loudly to a friend about tearing down this wall for his studio. I took one more breath, then I walked. I walked directly to the center of the lobby, to the exact spot under the central atrium light. I did not rush. I let the sound find me, and I let my presence stop it. And it did. The laughter trickled off first. A woman I recognized from a charity board saw me, and her smile froze. She nudged her neighbor. The whisper spread. "Leslie's here." The room grew quiet. The hired waiter stopped pouring. The little accountant looked up from his notepad, blinking. Dylan saw me and his smirk faltered. Marla was the last to turn. Her back was to me. When the silence finally registered, she turned around slowly, that polished, reptilian smile spreading across her face. "Leslie, darling," she boomed, raising her glass. "You're just in time. We're having a toast. We're deciding where to put the new family crest. I think the bronze inlay by the door, don't you?" I did not move. I did not smile back. I let my gaze travel from her, to the banner, to the accountant, to the guests, and then back to her. "The bar is closed," I said. My voice was not loud, but it carried in the sudden, vast silence of the lobby. It was the voice I used for final negotiations. A guest tittered nervously. "Oh, she's joking." I kept my eyes on Marla. "This event is over. I want everyone out." Marla's smile tightened, just a fraction. The performance was beginning. "Surprised at your tone, Leslie. After all we've done for you, this is a family celebration." "This is a private property matter," I said, "and you are trespassing. Who authorized this?" This was it, the question, the pivot. Marla took a step toward me, her eyes glittering. She was enjoying this. This was her theater. "Who authorized it?" "The family. Darling, we've been talking, August and I. It's time to bring Echelon back into the family fold where it belongs." She gestured around the lobby, at the marble, at the glass, at the life's work I had built. "We're consolidating what's ours." The collective pronoun, ours. She said it like a queen, as if the word itself was a deed of ownership. She thought this was a pronouncement. She had no idea it was an admission. I let the word ours hang in the air, a poisonous, cloying fog in my pristine lobby. "Marla," I said, my voice perfectly level. "That is a very serious and a very interesting choice of words." I turned to Quinn. He was standing by the desk, frozen, his face ashen. He looked like a man who had just realized he had given the keys to the fortress to the enemy. "Quinn, did Marla Rowan present you with paperwork?" He flinched, as if my voice had been a physical blow. "Yes, Ms. Burke, the interim management file, the one I told you about. Show it to me." Marla let out a high, brittle laugh. "Oh, darling, you don't need to bother the help. I have my copy right here." She snapped her fingers at Dylan, a gesture that always set my teeth on edge, as if he were a valet. He pulled a sleek, expensive-looking leather portfolio from his side and handed it to her. She extracted a single sheet of paper with a flourish, a practiced, theatrical gesture for her audience. "The original agreement," she announced, her voice booming in the suddenly vast space. "The one you signed when you were just a girl with a dream and a laptop. The one I co-signed to make it all possible. The one that made Echelon." She held it up. It was exactly as I remembered, but yellowed, aged, as if it had been stored in an attic. I could see the old Echelon logo, the one I had designed myself in a 24-hour coffee shop, and the oxidized, slightly raised impression of an old notary seal. It looked authentic. It looked historical. "It looks very official, doesn't it?" I said, not moving from my spot. "Quinn, did you check the date on that document?" He stammered, looking from me to her. "It said interim. The seal looked correct. I saw the Rowan name. I assumed it was a family matter." "You assumed," I said, the words landing like ice chips. "You assumed that this document, which is nearly a decade old, superseded every current filing Echelon Properties has with the state. You assumed it superseded my actual, current, sole owner LLC status." I placed my own briefcase on the polished granite desk. I did not hurry. I undid the clasps. I pulled out a simple, worn, manila file. It was not for show. It was for work. "This building," I said, my voice rising just enough to carry to every corner. "Mariner House, at 318 Slate Street, is held under title by Echelon Properties, LLC, an entity registered in this state, in good standing." I pulled out the first sheet. "This is the certificate of formation. As you can see, the sole member listed, the 100% owner, is Leslie Burke." I pulled out the next. "This is the deed for this property, purchased by Echelon Properties, LLC, not by the Rowan family, not by Rowan Legacy Planning, and not by Marla Rowan." "This is just paperwork, darling." Marla waved her hand, a dismissive, arrogant gesture. "We all know I was there from the beginning. I'm the co-founder." "You are not the co-founder," I stated. It was not an argument. It was a correction. As if on cue, the main lobby doors slid open. Elijah North walked in. Elijah is not a physically imposing man, but he moves with an aura of absolute, expensive finality. He wore a dark gray suit that probably cost more than my first car, and he carried a single, hard-sided aluminum briefcase. He ignored the crowd. He ignored the spilled champagne, and he walked directly to me. "Leslie," he said. "Elijah," I replied. "You're just in time. Marla was just showing us her paperwork." "Ah, yes," Elijah said, his eyes flicking to the yellowed page in Marla's hand. "The interim management agreement from year one, a fascinating piece of history." He placed his briefcase on the reception desk and clicked it open. He did not pull out one sheet. He pulled out a thick, meticulously organized, ring-bound volume with at least a dozen colored tabs. "History, of course, has a context," Elijah continued, his voice smooth and professional, as if he were addressing a boardroom, not a lobby full of trespassers. "And more importantly, an ending. This," he tapped the cover, "is the actual corporate file for Echelon Properties, LLC." He flipped to the first tab. Exhibit A, the updated corporate charter for Echelon Properties, filed 8 years ago, listing Leslie Burke as the sole managing member. He flipped to the next. Exhibit B, the official state-certified letter of good standing, dated, 2 days ago, again, sole member, Leslie Burke. He paused, his gaze landing on Marla, who had stopped smiling. He flipped to a third tab. He pulled this one out. It was 2 pages, stapled, with a crisp, modern notary stamp. "And Exhibit C," he said, holding it up for the room to see. "The termination of interim authority and release of all claims. A document signed by both Ms. Burke and, as you can see, Ms. Marla Rowan. Notarized on the day Ms. Burke repaid her initial $10,000 family loan. With interest, a document explicitly and permanently dissolving any and all managerial, fiduciary, or signatory roles Ms. Rowan ever purported to have. A document that is, 8 years, 4 months, and 12 days old. Marla stared at the paper as if he were holding a snake. Her polished mask was cracking, the foundations suddenly visible. Elijah held it out to her. "Would you like a copy, Marla? Or perhaps the original you signed is still in your family files?" The silence in the lobby was absolute. The family accountant had stopped writing. Dylan looked like he wanted to be physically sick. The ants were studying the floor. That's not... We built this together," Marla finally sputtered, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. "No," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "I built this. You watched." I turned to Sal, my head of security, who had been standing by the elevator bank, his arms crossed. "Sal, the party is over. Please escort these guests out of the building. My team will remain." "Wait, you can't." Dylan stepped forward, puffing his chest. "This is our family business. You can't just throw us out." Sal's team, larger and infinitely more imposing than Dylan, moved as one. They were polite, they were professional, but they were not optional. "Ma'am, sir, if you'll follow me." The guests, sensing the acute humiliation, the shift in power, began to file out. Muttering, no one was making eye contact with me. No one was making eye contact with Marla. The hired caterer was frantically trying to stack his flutes. "Leave it," I told him. "My team will handle it. Send your invoice to Ms. Rowan." Marla was frozen, her face a mask of disbelief and pure, unadulterated rage. "You will regret this, Leslie. You will not do this to your family." "This is not family," I said. "This is business, and you are trespassing, Sal." Sal gently but firmly placed a hand on Marla's elbow. "Right this way, ma'am." As the crowd thinned, I watched my security team begin a systematic sweep. 2 men headed for the stairs to check the upper floors. I watched Dylan, as he was being ushered out, look back at his cousin, the one who had been holding the rolled-up plans. The cousin was holding a clipboard and subtly trying to slide a phone back into his pocket. My eyes narrowed. "Sal," I called out. He paused. "Check the cameras." The man with the clipboard. What was he doing? "We'll review the footage, boss." I walked through the lobby as the last of them were pushed out the door. The cheap vinyl, Rowan Family Legacy Planning banner sagging, already half torn down. Elijah was waiting for me. They didn't just come to drink champagne, did they? "No," I said. I was replaying the images from the group chat. Dylan measuring the studio, the ants on the penthouse floor, but something else, something I had seen. I pulled up the chat. I zoomed in on a photo one of the ants had posted. In the background, a man I barely knew, another cousin, was in the telecom closet on the executive floor. He was aiming his phone, not at his face for a selfie, but at the server racks. I showed Elijah. "He's photographing my server cabinet." Then I remembered the accountant. I walked over to the scale model. The accountant's legal pad was gone, but he'd been standing there for a reason. I saw, in the corner, a small, dark object, a laser measure. He wasn't just appraising, he was measuring. He was measuring the utility shafts. "Elijah," I said, my voice quiet. They were conducting due diligence. His face darkened. "This wasn't an invasion, Leslie. This was industrial espionage, a hostile takeover attempt." The cousin with the clipboard, I remembered the word I'd seen on it. Cap table. They were trying to find out who my investors were, what my debt structure was. They weren't just claiming ownership, they were building a case for it. My phone buzzed. This time, it wasn't the family chat. It was my primary lender for the new Granite Wharf Lofts project. "Leslie, heard some rumors about a restructuring at Echelon. Is Marla Rowan a co-founder? Need to clarify before we move on the next tranche." My blood solidified. The timing, the precision. This wasn't a tantrum. This was a corporate strike. "Elijah," I said, holding out the phone. "It's already started." Another text. An investor. "What's this I hear about a family dispute? Is my equity secure?" Another restructuring. "They're spooking my lenders," I said. my voice like steel. The Granite Wharf refinancing package, it just got sidelined. This was a multi-front war. Right, Elijah said. War room, now. We went up to my office, the one they hadn't breached. Sal, I said into my phone. Lock it down. Full lockdown. Change ye every key card, every digital code, every physical lock on this building. Effective immediately. No one gets in or out without my personal verification. Quinn, I said, dialing my building manager. He picked up on the first ring, his voice shaking. Quinn, you are going to write an incident report. You will detail everything. The time they arrived, the document Marla presented. You will get a high-resolution copy of that document from security. You will pull all logs. You will have it on my desk, notarized, in 1 hour. Yes, Ms. Burke, I am so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix a breach. Quinn, a report does. Get it done. I hung up and faced the large glass wall of my office, the one that overlooked the city. I grabbed a dry erase marker. Okay, Elijah, I said. Damage assessment. Risks? I divided the glass into 5 columns: paperwork, access, optics, financial, legal. Paperwork is handled, Elijah said. We have the chain of title. It's clean. I wrote clean under paperwork. Access. They breached Mariner. They photographed our servers, I said. I wrote server breach and lockdown initiated. Optics, Elijah said, pacing. This is where they're hitting us. Family dispute. Stepmother co-founder. They are creating a narrative of instability. The blogs will pick this up by morning. I wrote narrative. Instability under optics. Financial. Granite Wharf is already stalled, I said. If my lenders get spooked, they can call my notes. They can trigger covenants. I wrote Granite Wharf stalled and covenant risk. Legal, Elijah said, stopping. This is where we hit back. This isn't just trespassing. This is speculative possession. This is intentional interference with business. This is libel. I wrote his words down. Speculative possession, interference, libel. I stared at the board. The chaos was taking shape. This was the problem. They're attacking on all fronts, I said. They're trying to drown us in noise. They're trying to create a reality where their claim is more powerful than my deed. Elijah nodded. Marla is emotional, but this plan isn't. This is calculated. They wanted to get in, get data, create a media storm, freeze your funding, and force you to the table to buy them out. They're not trying to win, I said. They're trying to make it too expensive for me to fight. I looked at the glass, at the city lights beginning to flicker on. I looked at the words, instability, risk, breach. I uncapped the marker again. I drew a line under all of it. I wrote, in big clear letters, they think entitlement equals equity. I underlined it. Prove them wrong, publicly, and in court. I turned to Elijah. Get me the report from Quinn. I want a forensic analysis of that fake document, and get me a list of every blog and financial reporter Marla has ever had lunch with. The siege was over. The war had just begun. The Gilded Heron is not a restaurant. It is a stage. It is a hushed, velvet-lined fortress where Riverton's old money and new power perform the theater of their lives. It is all dark wood, heavy silver, and waiters who move like ghosts. It is also, conveniently, one of the most surveilled dining establishments in the city, a fact I had personally confirmed 2 years ago when considering it as a tenant. The weekly Rowan family dinner, a mandatory farce instituted by Marla, was held there every Sunday at 7. It was now 7:15. My father had called me 3 times, his texts a frantic stream of, Marla is devastated. Just come and talk. We need to sort this out as a family. I had not responded. I had spent the last 3 hours with Elijah, Sal, and my new head of IT. We had locked down my servers, initiated a full digital forensic sweep, and confirmed that the cousin had, in fact, been attempting to access our investor data room. Quinn's report was pristine, a masterwork of CYA detail, complete with a high-resolution scan of Marla's fraudulent document. Elijah had been clear. She's created a she said narrative. You need a witness. You need to break that narrative in a public, undeniable way. So I went. I walked into the Gilded Heron not as a daughter, but as a litigant. I wore the same suit I had worn to the office, my briefcase in hand, the maitre d', a man named Julian, who knew me from my own business lunches, saw me and his eyes widened almost imperceptibly. "Ms. Burke," he murmured, "your family is in the wine room." "Thank you, Julian," I said. "Could you do me a favor? I'm expecting a heated discussion. Please ensure your staff is aware, and please, for my own protection, make a note that I've requested a record of this." He did not blink. "Our systems are, as always, operational. Ms. Burke, your safety is our priority," he was saying. "The cameras are on, and the audio is live." I walked through the main dining room, the clink of silver on porcelain, the low murmur of conversations about trusts and regattas, all faded as I approached the heavy oak doors of the wine room. I pushed one open. The entire Rowan clan was there. My father, looking pale and trapped at the far end of the long table, Marla, at the opposite end, in the seat of power, Dylan, beside her, looking sullen, the aunts, flanking the table, picking at bread rolls. And at the head of the table, perpendicular to them all, sat my grandfather, August Rowan. He was the patriarch, the source. He was a man made of pressed steel and old secrets. He had built the Rowan fortune not by being loud, but by being inevitable. He was observing the scene with a look of profound, faintly amused detachment. A glass of water, no ice, untouched before him. My entrance silenced the table. My father half stood, a look of pained relief on his face. "Leslie, thank God. Come, sit. We've ordered your... well, we can order." Marla's eyes, red-rimmed but dry, narrowed into slits. "So, you decided to show your face after humiliating your family." I did not move. I remained standing in the doorway, my briefcase at my side. "Hello? Father? Grandfather?" I nodded to August, who simply watched me. "I am not staying for dinner. I am here to ask one question." I placed my briefcase on a small, empty service table by the door. I clicked it open. From my pocket, I slid my phone out and placed it, screen up, on top of the case. I hit the record button. The small red light was subtle, but visible. Marla saw the light. "Are you recording me? In my own family?" "This is not your family. Marla, this is not your home. This is the Gilded Heron restaurant," I said, my voice clear and carrying, just loud enough for the room's microphones. "And this is not a family discussion. It is a legal matter." I looked directly at her. I did not raise my voice. I did not shake. I was not the humiliated child. I was the owner of Echelon Properties. "My question is this, Marla. Why did you use a voided, decade-old document, a document you knew to be fraudulent, to attempt a hostile, physical takeover of my building this afternoon?" The room's air pressure changed. My father gasped. "Leslie, what are you talking about? Takeover? Marla just wanted to consolidate." "Be quiet, Robert," August said, his voice a dry rustle. He had not taken his eyes off me. Marla's face, so carefully composed into a mask of the wronged victim, began to twitch. The performance was slipping. "How dare you?" she whispered, her voice low and venomous. "How dare you come in here and accuse me? Takeover. What a vicious word. We built Echelon. We built it, me and your father. We gave you that first $10,000. We gave you your start. We are the co-founders." "That is a lie," I said, simply. "It is the truth," she shrieked, slamming her fist on the table. The water glasses jumped. "We were there. I signed the papers with you. I was your manager." "You were," I agreed, my voice calm. "For 6 months, until I paid your $10,000 loan back, with interest." I reached into my briefcase. I did not pull out one sheet. I pulled out Elijah's pristine, tabbed binder. I dropped it on the service table. It landed with a solid, heavy, expensive thud. Because I knew this day would come, I said. I've been preparing for it for 10 years. I flipped open the binder. Tab A, I announced, as if I were in court. The check stub and bank confirmation for the repayment of the $10,000 loan, clearing 8 years, 4 months, and 12 days ago. My father looked confused. Leslie, what is this? Tab B, I continued, ignoring him. The termination of interim authority and release of all claims, signed by you, Marla, notarized, the original of which is in a bank vault. That, Marla stammered, that was a formality. It was a contract, I corrected. Tab C, the complete, updated corporate charter of Echelon Properties, LLC, filed with the state 8 years ago, listing one sole member, me, Tab D, the deed for Mariner House, Tab E, the timeline of every acquisition Echelon has ever made, every one of which occurred after your signature was legally and permanently removed from my business. I pushed the open binder toward the center of the table. The aunts were leaning in, their eyes wide. My father was pale, staring at the notarized signature page. You are not a co-founder, I said to Marla. You are not a partner. You are not an officer. You are legally nothing to my company. You were a predatory lender who tried to leverage a $10,000 loan into a $100 million empire. And today, you committed fraud. You used a document you knew was void to trespass, to steal, and to try to blow up my financing on the Granite Wharf deal. Marla's face was no longer composed. It was mottled, ugly, the mask entirely gone, shattered on the floor. You, ungrateful, she hissed. The word was ripped from her throat. After everything I did, I let you into my home. I raised you when your own mother. Don't you dare, I snapped, the ice in my voice finally breaking to show the fire beneath. You ungrateful little bitch. She moved. She was faster than I expected. She lunged across the corner of the table, her arms swinging. The sound of the slap was not loud. It was sharp, definitive. It cracked through the restaurant's civilized hush. My head snapped to the side. The sting was immediate, hot, and electric. My cheek was already on fire. The entire room, the entire restaurant, went silent. I could hear, from a table in the main dining room, a fork clattering to a plate, the sound unnaturally loud. I turned my head back. Slowly, I looked at her. She was breathing heavily, her chest heaving, her manicured hand still raised, her eyes wide with a mixture of fury and, now, a dawning horror at what she had just done. My father was, of course, useless. Marla! Oh my God! Leslie! Are you? Dylan had his phone out, but he wasn't recording. He was just staring, slack-jawed. And then I looked at the head of the table. My grandfather, August Rowan, had not moved. He had not flinched. He was still watching me, his gaze analytical, almost clinical. He tilted his head, a gesture of pure intellectual curiosity. He looked from my face to Marla's, and then back to me. Interesting, he said, his voice no louder than a murmur. And in that one word, I understood. This was not a family. This was a chessboard. And he was not a participant. He was a spectator. He was watching the game. Marla saw his reaction. She saw his absolute lack of defense for her. And she knew, in that instant, she had lost. The rage collapsed. The mask of the victim, the one she had tried to wear, now became her only refuge. Her face crumpled. A low, keening wail started in her throat. "Oh, Robert," she sobbed, collapsing back into her chair, pulling her hands to her face. She's trying to ruin us. She's stealing the company from her own family." Dylan, finally finding his role, jumped up. He put his arm around her. "Look what you did," he yelled at me, his voice cracking. "You come in here. You attack my mother. You're trying to steal everything." I did not respond. I did not touch my cheek, though I could feel the welt rising. I calmly reached for my phone and stopped the recording. I saved the file. I slid the phone into my pocket. I looked at the binder, still open on the table, a testament of hard, cold facts in a room choking on toxic emotions. I turned, picked up my briefcase, and latched it. I looked at my father. He just looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Leslie?" "No," I said. It was the only word I had left for him. I turned and walked out of the wine room. I did not run. I walked, my back straight, my heels clicking on the hardwood floor. I could feel every eye in the restaurant on me, on the bright red handprint that I knew was blooming on my face. I walked past Julian, who met my gaze and gave a single, short nod, acknowledgement, witness. I pushed through the heavy glass doors and into the cool night air. The valet lunged for his podium. "Ms. Burke, your car?" "I'll wait," I said. I was standing on the curb, taking my first clean breath in hours, when a shadow detached itself from the line of black town cars. It was a man I recognized, Mr. Davies, my grandfather's driver and, as I had always suspected, his attendant, his bodyguard, his eyes and ears. He stood a respectful 10 feet away. "Ms. Burke," he said, his voice a gravelly baritone. "Mayor Davies?" "Mr. Rowan," he said, "asked me to give you a message. Should I see you?" "Oh?" "He said to tell you, do not respond on social media tonight. Let the other side show their hand first. He said you'd understand." I looked at the black, reflected glass window of the town car, where I knew my grandfather would not be. He was still inside, watching the game play out. He had not defended me. He had not condemned Marla. He had offered a single, cold piece of strategy. He knew. He had seen the slap. He had seen the fraud. And his only contribution was a move for the chessboard. "Interesting," I said to Mr. Davies. I pulled out my phone. My cheek was throbbing. A dull, hot pulse. I opened a new text to Elijah. I typed one word. War. And I hit send. The war text was sent at 9:01 p.m. By the time I got back to my apartment, my cheek a silent, throbbing accusation, my secure email inbox was already flashing. Elijah did not sleep. At 11:30 p.m., the first public shot was fired. Not by me. My grandfather's advice was still ringing in my ears, but I did not need it. I never respond to noise. A Google alert. I've had on Echelon Properties since year one chimed. The link was to a local business blog, Riverton Rising, a hungry second-tier publication known for sensationalism. The headline was a masterpiece of malice, clearly fed to them by a source. Daughter deletes stepmother from multi-million-dollar legacy. I read it standing in my kitchen, the ice pack I'd grabbed dripping cold water onto the floor. It was all innuendo. Sources close to the family. Marla Rowan, the rumored co-founder. A dramatic and hostile restructuring. They were using the language of a public company, a Wall Street coup, to describe a woman who had never signed a single paycheck. It was designed to do one thing: create the illusion of equity, the illusion of a legitimate stake. Before I could even forward the link to Elijah, my Instagram feed exploded. Dylan. He had posted a video, a 60-second, slickly edited montage of their celebration at Mariner House. He had used the footage from before I arrived, the champagne, Marla giving a toast, Dylan with his tape measure, pointing at walls. He'd set it to some triumphant, inspirational stock music. The caption, "A new era of family leadership. So proud to be part of the Rowan Legacy Planning expansion at Mariner House. Big things coming. Family business, Echelon Rowan Legacy." He had recontextualized the invasion. He had turned a criminal trespass into a board meeting. He had made it look like a transition, a passing of the torch. The comments were already a flood of poison. "Congratulations. About time. So glad to see the whole family involved." This was the attack, a two-pronged strike, the media to create the narrative of instability, and social media to create the visual proof of a family partnership. The financial fallout was not theoretical. It did not wait. It began at 7:01 a.m. the next morning. My private line, the one only my bankers have, rang. It was Michael from Meridian Trust, the lead lender on the Granite Wharf lofts. His voice was strained, overly casual. "Leslie, good morning. Just calling for some clarity. We're seeing some market chatter about a potential shift in ownership at Echelon. A co-founder? We're going to need to pause the next tranche for the Granite Wharf deal. Just pro forma, you understand, until this is all cleared up." Pause. The single most expensive word in finance. Before I could even hang up, an email chimed in from the secondary lender. "Urgent. Request for clarification on corporate structure. All disbursements on hold." A third, from the mezzanine lender. "My terms are based on your sole ownership. Is your equity diluted?" Calling a meeting. The vice was closing. By 8 a.m., the calls from my tenants started. The 2 anchor tenants I had personally courted for Mariner House, the ones whose leases were the bedrock of my valuation, the White Shoe Law Firm, the high-end chocolatier. "We're postponing the signing, Leslie," the law firm's managing partner told me, his voice cool. "We require stability in our landlords. We just need to wait and see how this shakes out," the chocolatier's CEO emailed. They were not just attacking my reputation, they were strangling my cash flow. They were burning my term sheets. By 8:30 a.m., my conference room at Mariner House, now secured by 2 of Sal's best men, even on my own floor, was a war room. Elijah was there, his suit immaculate despite the fact he clearly had not slept. With him was Jessa Klein. Jessa is my outsourced CFO. She is not an employee. She is a hired gun. Jessa lives on data, black coffee, and a visceral hatred of inefficiency. She cares nothing for family drama. She cares about burn rates and liquidity. She was already at the glass whiteboard, her back to us, mapping out a flowchart of financial Armageddon. "This is not a PR problem," she said without turning. "This is a perception problem that has become a cash flow crisis. The Granite Wharf deal is leveraged. The Mariner House leases were our collateral against that leverage." She turned. Her eyes were sharp. "I've run the models. If Granite Wharf stays paused and we lose those 2 anchor tenants, our covenants on 3 other bonds are triggered. They are not trying to get you to the table, Leslie. They are trying to bankrupt you." She pointed to her simulation. "If they are smart, and this is smart, they will file for a temporary restraining order, a TRO. They will try to freeze your operating accounts, citing disputed ownership. If they get it, we have 12 business days. 12 days until we start missing payroll." 12 days. The clock was ticking. "Okay," Elijah said, stepping forward. He was in his element. This was not a family squabble. This was litigation. "They are loud, so we will be quiet. And we will be perfect. We are building the digital file. It will be our entire counteroffensive. My team is already on it." He began to write on the board, a clean, methodical list. 1. The timeline, a minute-by-minute history of Echelon Properties, Incorporation, Marla's interim document, the repayment of the $10,000 loan, the termination agreement, every acquisition Echelon has ever made, all dated after her termination. It will be undeniable. 2. The money. We're getting a certified, notarized statement from the bank manager who handled the wire transfer for that repayment. He remembers you, Leslie. He said you were the most organized kid he'd ever met. 3. The invasion. Quinn's report. He held up a thin, bound document. It's beautiful. He wrote it like a man confessing his sins. It's a notarized affidavit as of 7 a.m. this morning. It includes the security logs, the keycard access failures, the high-resolution stills from the CCTV of Dylan measuring the walls, of Marla pointing, of the accountant with his laser measure. It is a portrait of a crime. 4. The cap table, I said. They were trying to photograph my server racks. They're looking for my cap table. Exactly, Elijah said. They are telling the world you're diluted. So we will show our key stakeholders the truth. The certified, official cap table. One line item, Leslie Burke, 100%. Jessa, I said, turning to her, you and I draft a statement, not for the blogs, not for Dylan, for our lenders, for our investors, for our tenants. We put it in the secure data room. Tonight, the statement is neutral. An unrelated third party has made a baseless and fraudulent claim against the company. This claim is being handled by our legal counsel. For your confidence, we have voluntarily attached the complete, certified corporate file for your review. We don't feed the drama. We feed them the facts. We feed them the paper. Good, Jessa said, already typing. Proof, not posture. Elijah, I said. That document Marla was waving. It looked yellow. It looked aged, like a prop. I want a document examiner, not a lawyer, a forensic specialist. I want that interim document analyzed. I want to know the age of the ink. I want to know if the metadata on the font is from this decade. I want to prove it's a forgery, not just void. Already on it, he said. He's picking up a copy from Sal this morning. As if summoned by the convergence of paper and power. My private line rang, the one that bypasses my assistant. I looked at the caller ID. August Rowan. I paused, then tapped the speakerphone. The air in the room went still. Leslie. His voice was dry, like old parchment. Grandfather? You are making noise, he said. It was an accusation. I have not said a single word, I replied, my voice as cold as his. Good. The blogs are noise. The video is noise. A dog barks at a train. The train does not bark back. Keep it that way. Paper beats noise. Always. I trust you have your paper. I do, I said. A dry chuckle. Good. And Leslie, a pause. In chess, you do not waste time capturing a pawn that has put itself in your way. You move the rook. Make your move. He hung up. Jessa and Elijah stared at the phone. Move the rook, Jessa muttered. What the hell does that mean? It means he's not helping, I said, grabbing my briefcase. It means he's watching, and it means he expects me to win. He's right. Paper. The call clarified something. What other paper was out there? What other loose ends had Marla's desperation left? I spent the next 2 hours in my own digital archive. I swept every asset, every holding company, every file from the last 10 years, and I found them. 2 dormant powers of attorney, relics from an old deal in Asia, years ago, that had briefly involved a holding company Marla's family office was associated with. They were expired, they were useless, but they were paper. They had her name on them. They were a loose thread. I had my general counsel revoke them, file the revocations with the state, and get certified copies of the revocation. I did it in 1 hour. I was plugging every hole. We were building a fortress of facts, a wall of paper. We spent the day executing. The data room was populated. The lenders were given secure access. The forensic report on the ink was promising. Then, at 4:45 p.m., Elijah's phone buzzed with a text. He read it, and the professional calm on his face hardened into something else. What? I asked. They're moving, he said. The leak just came through from a friend at the courthouse. They're filing? Oh, yes, and they hired a monster. He said the name, and the air left the room. Rex Danforth. I knew the name. Everyone in real estate knew Rex Danforth. He wasn't a litigator. He was a corporate raider with a law degree. He specialized in ex parte motions, in emergency injunctions, in walking into a judge's chambers on a Friday afternoon with a stack of evidence and walking out with a temporary restraining order that could freeze a billion-dollar company solid before it even knew what hit it. He's an ambush specialist, I said, the final piece clicking into place. The blog, the video, it was all just noise. It was the distraction. Yes, Elijah said, grabbing his own briefcase. This was the plan all along. They're not just trying to spook our lenders. They're trying to shut us down. They are going for a full asset freeze. Jessa looked at her spreadsheet, her face pale. A full freeze, she said. That's not 12 days. That's immediate. That's catastrophic. This was their rook. This was the move. They weren't just trying to get a seat at the table. They were trying to set it on fire. Rex Danforth, the name hung in the air of the war room, a promise of scorched earth and tactical, theatrical law. Danforth did not file motions. He dropped bombs. He specialized in the Friday afternoon ex parte ambush, walking into a judge's chambers with a tower of affidavits and walking out with an order that could freeze $1 billion company before its lawyers had even finished lunch. They were not just coming for a peace, they were coming for a shutdown. They are going to argue in a vacuum, I said, my voice quiet. They're going to file for that TRO, citing disputed assets and imminent harm. They'll use the blog, Dylan's video, and that fraudulent document. They want to shut down our operating accounts before we even get a chance to speak. Exactly, Elijah said. Danforth will create a reality where Marla is the wronged co-founder and you're the volatile daughter liquidating the family's assets. He needs a judge to see instability. Then we neutralize the vacuum, I said. We create our own reality, one based on paper, and we get it to the people who matter before Danforth gets his robes on. I turned to Jessa. That statement you drafted, it's not just a statement, it's the homepage. We did not panic. We executed. For the next 3 hours, my team, the core of Echelon, plus Sal's top security man, worked with a cold, precise fury. We weren't just building a legal defense. We were launching a counter-narrative, one built not of noise, but of irrefutable, boring, glorious facts. We built a secure, invitation-only data portal, a digital fortress. The landing page was stark. Just the Echelon logo and 5 words I'd written on the glass wall. Proof, not posture. There was no emotion. There was only the timeline. Year 1. March. Echelon Properties. LLC Incorporated. Sole member. Leslie Burke. 100%. Year 1. May. Temporary interim authority granted to Marla Rowan. Collateral for a $10,000 personal loan. Year 1. November. Loan repaid in full, with interest. Year 1. November. Termination of interim authority and release of all claims. Signed and notarized by Marla Rowan. Year 2. Present. All Echelon assets, including Mariner House and Granite Wharf, acquired solely by the LLC after termination of Ms. Rowan's authority. It was a fortress of PDFs. We uploaded the certified charter from the state. We uploaded the bank statements showing the wire transfer of the loan repayment. We uploaded the signed termination agreement. We uploaded Quinn's pristine, notarized affidavit of the trespass, complete with time-stamped screenshots from the CCTV. We uploaded the actual, current, one-line cap table. By 8 p.m., it was live. An email, from me, went out to every lender, every investor, and the managing partners of my 2 nervous anchor tenants. In response to recent market chatter, I wrote, "We have prepared a transparency file for your review. We believe facts, not rumors, are the foundation of good business. Your confidence is our highest priority." We had built the truth. We had handed them the blueprints. Now, Elijah could go on the offensive. He sent his cease and desist letters. The one to Riverton Rising was a legal scalpel. It included the proof, not posture timeline. It cited actual malice and intentional interference with business. It pointed out that the rumored co-founder they had quoted had, in fact, been legally terminated 8 years prior. It gave them 12 hours to retract and issue a correction, or we would file for damages, naming the editor personally. The blog folded like a wet paper bag. By 9:30 p.m., the article was gone. The editor, terrified, sent Elijah a groveling email claiming he was misled by a source. The letter to Dylan was different. It was a net. It cataloged his trespassing, his public and false claims of ownership, my new studio, and his role in the coordinated effort to defame and damage Echelon. Dylan, arrogant and steeped in entitlement, did exactly what Elijah had hoped. He posted a screenshot of the C&D letter to his Instagram story. "Look at this," he wrote. "She's trying to silence us for speaking the truth. She's scared." Elijah, watching the feed, smiled. "And we're done," he said. He screen captured Dylan's post. "He's confirmed receipt, he's admitted his intent, and he's just handed us a beautiful, time-stamped admission of malice. Keep talking. Dylan." Every post, every comment, was being captured and saved to our evidence file. While Elijah handled the rats in the basement, I went to the roof. I couldn't be seen to be hiding, but I would not, under any circumstances, engage in the mudslinging. I called in a favor. Amelia Vance, host of the Capital Ledger podcast, is the most respected financial journalist in the state. She respects builders, but she eviscerates fools. I had a standing invitation. I called her producer. "I'm available tomorrow, 7 a.m. I walked into the studio the next morning. Amelia's eyes were sharp. She knew. The entire city knew. "Leslie," she said, before the mics went hot, "you look like you're in a fight." "I'm in a clarification. Amelia," I said. She didn't lead with the gossip. She's too smart for that. We talked about the market. We talked about commercial lease rates. We talked about the Granite Wharf project. Then, 10 minutes in, the pivot. "There's a lot of talk, Leslie," she said, her voice neutral, "about partners, about family involvement in enterprises like yours. How do you, as a CEO, handle disputes when they involve personal relationships?" This was it. The entire financial community was listening. I did not mention Marla. I did not mention Dylan, or the blog, or the slap. I spoke only of the principle. "Amelia," I said, my voice calm and steady, "I believe that in business, you are either a founder, an employee, or an investor. There is no fourth category. Family is not a cap table position. Entitlement is not equity. The only thing that protects everyone, the only thing that makes partnerships work, is paper. It's the operating agreement. It's the contract. It's the deed." I leaned in, just a fraction. Clear, written. Boundaries don't just protect the business. They protect the people. They keep assumptions from becoming arguments, and arguments from becoming wars. My entire reputation with my lenders, with my tenants, is built on one thing: absolute, verifiable, boring, factual clarity. The paper is everything. The segment was an uppercut. The fallout was immediate. My phone, which had been silent with fear from my stakeholders, began to ring. It was Michael, from Meridian Trust, the lead lender. "Leslie," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. I just got the link to your portal. I heard you on Capital Ledger. Boring, factual clarity. I love that." He cleared his throat. All business again. "The clarity we requested? We've received it. The pause on Granite Wharf is lifted. The tranche will be wired by noon." The second call was the law firm. "Ms. Burke, we reviewed the transparency file. That is the most thorough piece of documentation I have ever seen from a landlord. We are countersigning the Mariner House lease. Send it over." My restraint, my proof, not posture portal, hadn't just saved the deals. It had strengthened them. I hadn't just proven I was stable. I had proven I was the only adult in the room. Jessa Klein, my CFO, was not celebrating. She was a pragmatist. "Good," she said, looking at her cash flow models. "We dodged the bullet, but Rex Danforth is still out there. He's still going to file for that TRO. He's lost the instability argument, so now he'll just try to create a procedural nightmare. We need a firewall." "What kind?" I asked. "A financial one. We're too exposed. All our operating capital is in one basket, the one Danforth will target. I'm proposing we open a new, secondary line of credit at Meridian Trust. We secure it against our receivables, the leases that were just signed, not against the physical assets like Mariner House. It's a parallel fund, a ghost account. If Danforth gets a judge to freeze account A, we're already operating out of account B. He won't even know it exists until we're in court. It was brilliant, a financial escape route. Do it, I said. While Jessa built the financial firewall, Sal was building the physical one. The breach at Mariner House was a humiliation he was taking personally. Biometrics, he said, showing me the new work order. Fingerprint, retina, and keycard access to all server rooms, all executive offices, and all utility closets. Effective today. He was not joking. And we're implementing a new 2-key protocol. No vendor, no guest, family or not, enters a secure area without a verified work order and a direct on-site escort from my team. Quinn, he added with a grim smile, has enthusiastically volunteered to oversee the new protocol. The fortress was secure. The perimeter was holding. Now, we needed the sword. It arrived at 3 p.m. that day, in an email from Elijah. The subject, hello, forgery. I had him on the phone instantly. His voice was vibrating, a low, triumphant thrum. The document examiner's report is in. Leslie, it's not just good. It's art. The ink? I asked. The ink is modern, but that's not the good part, he said, drawing it out. The paper is wrong. It's been artificially aged, but that's not the good part either. Elijah, I warned. Microdots, he said. Finally, tiny, almost invisible tracking dots that professional printers and copiers spray on every page. They trace the machine's serial number and the date of the print. I went very, very still. The ancient original document Marla was waving? It has microdots, and those dots trace back to a FedEx office on the east side of town. But here, he said, is the best part, the specific printer model that made those dots. It wasn't manufactured until 4 years after the date on the document. I closed my eyes. It's a fake. It is a recent fabrication, Elijah corrected, savoring the legal term. It's a provable, demonstrable, time-stamped fraud. Danforth's entire case, his entire wronged co-founder narrative, is based on a document that was printed at a Kinko's last month. Congratulations, Leslie. We just got our silver bullet. An hour later, a second bullet arrived, not from a lawyer. A black car. One I did not recognize. Pulled up to Mariner House. The driver, in a crisp suit, handed Sal a single, padded envelope. Sal, following our new biometric protocol, had it scanned, logged, and brought to my office. There was no note, just a single high-capacity USB drive. I plugged it into my secure, air-gapped laptop. It contained one folder, the Gilded Heron. Inside were 4 video files. It was the CCTV footage, but it wasn't the grainy, silent feed from the ceiling. This was different. It was multi-angle, the main overview, the camera from the bar. And one more, a clear, stable shot from the service corner of the room. And it had audio. Crystal clear, broadcast quality audio. I'm here to ask one question, Marla. My own voice, cold and clear. Why did you use a voided, decade-old document to attempt a hostile physical takeover of my building? I watched the whole thing, her lies. We built Echelon. We are the co-founders. My presentation of the binder, the facts, the truth. And then I watched the slap. It was undeniable. The crack was sharp, my head snapping to the side, her face, not a victim's, but a mask of pure, violent rage. I rewatched the feed from the service corner. I knew that angle. It was where my grandfather's attendant, Mr. Davies, had been standing, silently, the whole time. The audio, it was too clean. It wasn't my phone. It was him, a microphone, a goddamn cufflink. My grandfather hadn't just been watching. He had been recording. In the folder was one last file, a PDF, a chain of custody affidavit, signed by the restaurant's manager and a third-party security firm, attesting to the authenticity and the unedited nature of the footage and audio. It was legally pristine. It was admissible. He hadn't just sent me a strategic tip. He had sent me the other sword. Elijah had the forgery, the proof that Marla's claim was a fraud. I now had the video, the proof that Marla's victimhood was an act. I saved the file into our evidence folder. I created a new subfolder. I titled it, Spoliation and Pattern of Coercion. The Riverton Rising blog posted its correction, a mealy-mouthed paragraph about new information and clarified corporate structures. The comments on Dylan's Instagram, which he was still furiously updating, had begun to turn. Wait, so this is all a lie? Why are you trespassing in your own building? He was a dog barking at a train. I was the train, and the track was clear. We had the forgery. We had the video. We had the 2 silver bullets, and we were loading the gun, preparing to file our own suit for damages, fraud, and a restraining order against them. We were finally on the offensive. And that is exactly when Rex Danforth struck. He didn't hit us. He didn't hit Elijah. He hit the bank. The call came at 4:05 p.m., the witching hour of finance. Not from Elijah, not from the court, from my private banker at Meridian Trust, the one who handled my main operating accounts. His name was David, and he sounded like he'd seen a ghost. "Leslie," he said, his voice tight, I'm calling you as a courtesy before the system automatically notifies you. We just received a judicial order, an administrative freeze, on Echelon operating account, number ending in 4492. It's effective immediately. My blood did not run cold. It stopped moving entirely. Account 4492. That was not just an account. It was the account. It was payroll. It was my vendors. It was my insurance. It was the account from which I was scheduled to wire the final 8-figure tranche for the Granite Wharf closing. He did it, I said, my voice a whisper. I hung up. My main line lit up. Elijah. He did it, I said again. I'm looking at it. Elijah's voice was a low growl. He didn't even file in the main docket. He went ex parte, straight to a judge, Chambers, Judge Alvarez. He filed a preliminary injunction to preserve disputed co-owned assets. He named Echelon. He named Mariner House. And he specifically named the Granite Wharf project. He got the order. Ex parte. He had gone to the judge alone. He had presented his case in a vacuum, without me, without Elijah, without any of our evidence. He had walked in with Marla's fraudulent document, Dylan's edited video, and a story about a volatile daughter liquidating family assets. And the judge, seeing the imminent risk, had signed it. Rex Danforth had just frozen my oxygen supply. The war room, which had been buzzing with offensive strategy, went dead silent. Jessa Klein, my CFO, was the first to move. She walked to the whiteboard, her face pale but set. The Granite Wharf clock, she said. We have to wire the final payment in 7 days, or we are in default. We lose the project. We lose the deposits. We trigger cross-default covenants on half our portfolio. We can't wire, I said, stating the impossible. He froze the account. He froze the main account, Jessa said, her marker flying. The ghost account, the Meridian line of credit we opened, it's active. But it's not funded for this, I said. It's a line of credit secured against receivables. It's not a cash-in-hand fund. It is now, she said grimly. We're activating the cash burn protocol. Effective immediately, all non-essential spending is at zero, all payables are extended. We are drawing on that line of credit, just enough to keep the lights on. We are officially, as of this moment, breathing underwater. The siege had begun. The next morning, the real fallout hit. It was not the lenders. They were still placated by my data room. It was the vendors, the subcontractors, the men with hammers and wrenches. My phone rang. It was Mark, my head contractor at Granite Wharf. He was a good man. He sounded panicked. Leslie, what the hell is going on? I just got a notice from my supplier. Your payment bounced. Bounced, my guys. They get their checks on Friday. I've got 50 men on that site. They are walking off the job if I can't make payroll. The bank says your account is frozen. You insolvent. Leslie, you need to tell me. This was Danforth's real play. He wasn't just trying to stop me. He was trying to turn my own people against me, to start a bank run, to make me a pariah. I took a breath. Mark, listen to me. I am not insolvent. I am under a procedural attack, a fraudulent one. I am sending you a link right now. It's my secure transparency portal. It has the facts. It shows the fraud. It shows the truth. He grunted. Facts don't pay my drywallers. This will, I said. My attorney, Elijah North, is hosting a mandatory conference call for all primary vendors at 6 p.m. tonight. He will walk you through the legal situation. He will show you the proof, and Jessa Klein, my CFO, will explain how we are rerouting all payments through our secondary, unaffected credit facility. Your checks will be cut. They will be from a different account number. They will clear. I am not asking for your trust. Mark, I am showing you the paper. I spent the next 3 hours on the phone, personally, calling the HVAC technicians, the marble supplier for the Mariner lobby, the landscaping firm, every single one. I walked them through the same script. It's an attack. Here's the proof. Here's the lawyer. Here's the new account. I was not feeding the monster. I was feeding the data room. While I was fighting in the trenches, Danforth was fighting on television. I walked into the office at 5 a.m. the next day, after not sleeping at all. The big screen in the elevator lobby was on. Riverton Morning News. And there he was. Rex Danforth. His silver hair immaculate. His face a mask of smooth, patrician concern. And next to him, looking like a grieving son, was Dylan. Mr. Danforth? The host said, her face dripping with sympathy. This is a terrible situation. A family, torn apart. It's a tragedy. Kate, Danforth said, his voice a somber baritone. You have a pioneering businesswoman, Marla Rowan, who, sources say, helped build this real estate empire from the ground up with her stepdaughter. Now, she's been unceremoniously pushed out, locked out of her own building. Mr. Rowan, the host said, turning to Dylan, you were there. You just wanted to help. My mother, we just wanted to stabilize things, Dylan said, reading his lines. Leslie, she's a brilliant builder, but she's over-leveraging. This Granite Wharf deal, it's drowning the company in debt. We were just trying to protect the legacy, and for that, she's frozen us out. Mr. Danforth, the host said, your client has been accused of trespassing. A misunderstanding, Danforth said with a wave of his hand. Marla was operating under a valid management agreement. The real issue here, Kate, is that we have an ambitious and, frankly, emotionally volatile young woman trying to liquidate the family's assets. We're not seeking a windfall. We are simply asking the court to preserve the family legacy, to protect Marla's stake until this can all be sorted out. Emotionally volatile. The word was a bullet. He was using the slap. He was using my reaction to their assault as proof of my instability. I walked into my war room. Elijah was there, holding 2 cups of coffee. He had clearly seen the broadcast. Before you say a word, he said, handing me one, don't feed the monster. He called me volatile, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Of course he did, Elijah said. He's creating a public narrative for the judge. He's building a story. He wants you to scream, to issue a press release, to look exactly as unhinged as he claims you are, and you are going to respond by being the most organized, boring, and fact-based CEO he has ever encountered. He was right. I would not tell a better story. I would show better math. I spent the next 48 hours in that room. I did not go home. I lived on coffee and adrenaline, the whiteboard covered in my own handwriting. I was cross-referencing every line of Danforth's 30-page injunction request with our evidence. His claim, Marla Rowan, as co-founder, is entitled to 50% of all assets. My proof, Exhibit A, Articles of Incorporation. Leslie Burke, 100%. Exhibit B, the signed termination agreement. His claim, The Granite Wharf deal is a wasteful liquidation of shared assets. My proof. Exhibit C. Jessa's full financial workup, showing the deal was accretive, projecting a 30% profit margin. At 2 a.m. on Friday, Quinn, my building manager, knocked on the door. He looked like he had not slept in days, but his eyes were not guilty anymore. They were angry. "Ms. Burke," he said, his voice firm. "I watched that television segment. What he said about you, what they are claiming." He placed a new, freshly notarized document on the table. "My original affidavit was just the facts. This is the truth. I want to testify." I looked at him. "Quinn?" "He's saying you're volatile," Quinn said, his jaw set. "He's painting her as the victim, but I was there. I was the one she lied to. She didn't just show me an old document. Ms. Burke, she performed it. She knew I was new. She knew the name Rowan meant something. She used her position, her age, her family status, to intentionally deceive me. She didn't just trespass. She manipulated. She lied. I want to tell a judge that, face to face. I want to tell them what fraud actually looks like." He had turned his guilt into a weapon. He was my witness. Just before dawn, a new message, not a text, not an email, a formal, linen-enveloped letter, delivered by courier, from my grandfather's trust attorney. I opened it. It was not a letter. It was a single line, typed on heavy, cream-colored bond. "The rook, not the pawn, is the piece you're thinking of." I stared at it. "Move the rook," he'd said before. This was different. He wasn't telling me what to move. He was telling me who I was. I was not the pawn, to be sacrificed. I was not the bishop. All angles and subtlety. I was the rook. Straight lines. Unstoppable power. I handed the note to Elijah, who was asleep in a chair. He startled awake, read it, and grunted. "Old man and his damn metaphors." "It means we stop defending," I said. "We stop counterpunching. We move, now." We filed. At 8 a.m., we did not just file a response. We filed a motion to immediately dissolve the administrative freeze and for sanctions for fraud upon the court. It was not a legal brief. It was a kill package. We did not argue. We presented Exhibit A, the complete, certified chain of title. Exhibit B, the notarized bank records of the loan repayment. Exhibit C, the signed, notarized termination agreement. Exhibit D, the full 90-page forensic document examiner's report, proving Marla's interim agreement was a forgery printed last month. Exhibit E, the supplemental, 2-part affidavit of Quinn, detailing the intentional deception. Exhibit F, the complete chain of custody video file from the Gilded Heron, showing the unprovoked assault. Exhibit G, a curated file of screenshots from Dylan's Instagram, proving a pattern of malice and intentional interference with business. We were not just asking for the freeze to be lifted. We were accusing Rex Danforth and his client of committing a crime against the court itself. The phone rang at 11 a.m. The court clerk. Her voice was not friendly. It was clipped, furious. "Mr. North," she said, "Judge Alvarez has received your motion. He has also," she paused, "reviewed the exhibits. The ex parte administrative freeze is hereby vacated, effective immediately. He is displeased. A full evidentiary hearing on your motion is scheduled." "When?" Elijah asked. "Next Thursday, 9 a.m., sharp, and counsel," she said, her voice dropping. "The judge wanted me to tell you he has read your file. He said to be prepared." The line clicked dead. The freeze was gone. The clock was reset. Jessa was already on the phone with the bank, initiating the wire for Granite Wharf. 9 days. We had 9 days to prepare for the end. The freeze was lifted, but that was just the stay of execution. The hearing in 9 days was the trial. Rex Danforth had been caught committing fraud on the court. His reputation, his entire practice, was now on the line. He wasn't just fighting for Marla anymore. He was fighting for his license. He would be lethal. And my grandfather, with his one-line letter, had just handed me a new identity. I was not the pawn. I was the rook. Rooks, I said to Elijah, who was now living on a diet of black coffee and pure spite. Move in straight lines. They clear the board. So we clear it, he said. Danforth's case is built on one document. We don't just prove it's a forgery. We prove who forged it, when they forged it, and why. The hunt for the truth became beautifully, terrifyingly simple. We were no longer defending. We were excavating. The first move was a straight line. Elijah's forensic document examiner had identified the printer model that created the microdots on Marla's ancient document. It was a high-end Xerox, the kind used by professional print shops, not a home office, and the dots traced back to a FedEx office. No, I said. Marla is too vain for that. She wouldn't be caught dead at a Kinko's. She would have used a family printer, someone she knew. Elijah's team cross-referenced the machine's serial number. It had belonged to a boutique printer, Letterman Press, which had gone bankrupt 6 months ago. We sent a subpoena, not to the dead company, but to the successor entity that had bought all their assets and, more importantly, their digital archives. 2 days later, we got the metadata, the file. "Oh, you are beautiful," Elijah murmured, looking at the screen. It was all there. A print job, dated 4 weeks ago. The customer name, Dylan Rowan. The job notes, 1 copy, archival quality paper, aged finish. The file name, Marla Interim Final v3.pdf. He had, quite literally, kept a digital receipt for his crime. The metadata from the PDF itself confirmed it was created the day before the print job, using a font that Echelon had not used in almost a decade. It was an open and shut case of fabrication. The second move was to the notary, the woman whose name and seal were on the fraudulent document. Her name was Agnes Peel. Elijah found her in a retirement community in Florida. She was 82 years old, sharp as a tack, and furious that her name was being used. "My seal?" she said, her voice crackling over the video deposition. "Oh, heavens, no. That seal, the one with that number, it expired 2 years before the date on that ridiculous document you showed me. I renewed it, of course, but that's not the one." "And the signature, Ms. Peel?" Elijah asked gently. "It's a good try," she sniffed. "But look at the P. I always make a loop. That one is a straight line. I never signed that. That is not my signature." We now had the forger, Dylan, the fraudulent document, and the fraudulent notary. But Danforth was a storyteller. He would try to pivot, to claim Dylan was an overeager son, and Marla knew nothing. He would paint her as a poor, confused victim. We had to prove intent. We had to prove this was a conspiracy. The proof, it turned out, was already in our hands. Sal's team, in their security sweep of Mariner House after the invasion, had recovered everything. That included a sweep of the guest Wi-Fi network. The cousin who had been taking pictures of my server racks, the one with the clipboard, he had been emailing while connected to my Wi-Fi. We had the packet captures, and Elijah's tech team decrypted it. It was an email from Dylan Rowan to his cousin, sent 2 days before the invasion. The subject line, game plan, Sunday. The body was short. "Cousin, you get the server room pics. Dad's accountant gets the shafts. We just need to make enough noise. Danforth says once the court freezes her cash, she'll have to settle. This is just about getting her to the table. She'll break." She'll have to settle. She'll break. I stared at the words. This was the entire conspiracy. It was not a misunderstanding. It was a calculated, criminal shakedown. It was extortion. Gift-wrapped in a family dispute. "They're done," I said, the words feeling cold in my mouth. "They are done," Elijah agreed. We spent a day rebuilding the history of Echelon, just as I had for the Capital Ledger podcast, but this time, with receipts. We traced my real seed money, not $10,000 from Marla. It was $12,000, $500 from a community microfund for female entrepreneurs. We had the application, we had the check, we had the repayment, in full. 2 years later. We found the original, real estate attorney email chain from 10 years ago. The one that explained why Marla's name was ever on a document. It was because the bank I was using for a small construction loan was run by a friend of my father's, and the underwriter felt more comfortable with an established Rowan on the paperwork. It was a convenience, a favor, and the termination agreement, the one I'd had Elijah draft, was the formal, final end of that convenience. We had the truth, a fortress of it. But my grandfather, it seemed, was not finished. A second envelope arrived, not at my office, at my home, delivered not by a courier, but by Mr. Davies himself. He handed it to my doorman, and it was brought up to me. This envelope was heavier. It was not a note. It was a document, thick, bound in blue. It was the Rowan Family Trust Charter, the governing document for my grandfather's entire estate. I had never seen it. I knew I was a beneficiary, as was my father, as was Dylan, as was Marla, by virtue of her marriage, but I had never seen the rules. A single page was marked with a small, discreet pencil check. I read the section. It was titled, Article 9, Beneficiary Conduct and Fiduciary Duty. I read it once, then I read it again. It was a hidden clause, a time bomb. It stated that any beneficiary who, willfully and with malice, attempts to defraud, defame, or otherwise cause material harm to another beneficiary or their wholly owned assets would be found in breach of their fiduciary duty to the trust itself. The penalty was not a slap on the wrist, it was an execution. Upon such a finding, it read, the trustees may, at their sole discretion, suspend any and all distributions, benefits, and claims for said beneficiary for a period not to exceed 5 years. My breath caught. To defraud another beneficiary or their wholly owned assets. This document wasn't about Echelon, it was about Marla. She wasn't just my stepmother, she was a fellow beneficiary. By attacking me, my wholly owned asset, she had attacked the trust itself. I called Elijah. I read it to him. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. My God, he whispered. The old man, he planned for this. He planned for a snake in the garden. When was this signed, Elijah? He was silent for a moment as he looked at the copy I'd sent him. The date on this revision. Leslie, it's from last spring. Last spring. Months before the invasion. Months before any of this. He had seen Marla. He had seen Dylan, and he had quietly set a trap, a 5-year, multi-million-dollar trap. And suddenly, I understood. The dinner, the slap, his one cryptic word. Interesting. It was not apathy. It was not curiosity. It was confirmation. It was the sound of a predator watching its prey step directly onto the trigger plate. He wasn't testing me. He was validating his own trap. He was watching Marla engineer her own downfall. And he was confirming that I was, in fact, the one who would have the strength to pull the lever. I was the rook. I sat back. Elijah, get the trust lawyer. Get him to confirm this is the active charter. We are adding it to the motion. The hearing was 3 days away. The air in the city felt thin. Rex Danforth, predictably, was trying to wriggle out. He filed a motion for a continuance, a delay. He cited new evidence and scheduling conflicts. Elijah's response was a single page. Mr. Danforth created this fire. He cannot now claim he is too busy to put it out. The judge's reply was even shorter. Motion for continuance denied. The existing, demonstrated financial harm to Ms. Burke's business and the public nature of this dispute require an immediate hearing. I will see you on Thursday. The final pieces fell into place. Our video expert, a man who testified for the FBI, filed his affidavit. The Gilded Heron video and audio were authentic. The chain of custody, from my grandfather's man, Mr. Davies, to the restaurant's security firm, to us, was pristine and unbroken. and I added one last, quiet witness. Julian, the maitre d' at the Gilded Heron. His affidavit was devastating in its simplicity. He stated that he had been standing by the wine room, in the service alcove, when Marla's party first arrived, before I got there. He stated, under penalty of perjury, that he had overheard Marla Rowan speaking to her son, Dylan. Dylan had asked, "What if she doesn't break? What if she just fights?" And Julian had heard Marla laugh, a low, confident sound. "Darling," she had said, "don't be silly. She's just like her mother, all steel on the outside, all glass on the inside. Push her hard enough, and she'll fold. She always folds." We had it, the motive, the fraud, the conspiracy, the assault, and the penalty. It was no longer a hearing, it was a sentencing. The courtroom was not a place for emotion. It was a sterile beige box of acoustic tile and pressed wood, designed to absorb sound, to muffle passion, to boil everything down to dry. Hard fact. We sat at the defendant's table. Elijah, with his binders stacked in a precise, architectural tower. Me, my hands clasped, my spine straight. At the plaintiff's table, Marla was performing the role of the grieving matriarch. She was dressed in a tasteful, funereal black, a single strand of pearls at her throat. Dylan, beside her, looked jumpy, his leg bouncing under the table, and Rex Danforth, their hired gun, looked serene. He was an actor, and this was his opening night. Judge Alvarez entered, his face a mask of judicial neutrality, but his eyes were sharp. He had read our motion. He knew he had been lied to. This was not a hearing. It was a reckoning. "Mr. Danforth," the judge said, his voice flat, "you may begin." Danforth rose, his movements fluid, his voice a rich, sympathetic baritone. "Thank you, Your Honor." He walked to the center. He did not look at the judge. He looked at the gallery, at the imagined jury. "Your Honor," he began, his voice thick with practiced sorrow. "What we have here is not a corporate dispute. It is a family tragedy, a story as old as time." He gestured to Marla, who dutifully lowered her gaze. "This is a case about a mother, Marla Rowan, who poured her heart, her soul, and her family's good name into building a business with her stepdaughter, a business called Echelon. They built it together, from the ground up." He paced, his voice rising, and when that business became a success, when it became a multi-million-dollar empire, what happened? The daughter, he turned, his finger stabbing the air toward me. In an act of cold, ambitious calculation, deleted her, ousted her, locked her out of the very building they built together. We are here to ask for justice. We are here to protect a mother's legacy from an ungrateful child. It was a beautiful performance, a complete fiction. Elijah stood. He did not move to the center. He stood by his table. He did not raise his voice. He did not look at Marla. He looked at Judge Alvarez. "Your Honor," he said, his voice a cool, flat counterpoint to Danforth's theater, "we are not here to discuss a family. We are here to discuss a limited liability corporation, and the facts are not emotional. They are chronological." The large monitor on the wall, the one Danforth had ignored, flickered to life. A timeline appeared. 8:10 a.m., March 4th, 10 years ago, Elijah said, his voice a metronome. "Echelon Properties, LLC is incorporated. Sole member and 100% owner, Leslie Burke, Exhibit A." A new line appeared. 9:20 a.m., May 1st, a temporary interim authority agreement is signed by Ms. Marla Rowan, acting as a short-term guarantor for a $10,000 personal loan, Exhibit B. Another line. 10:04 a.m., November 7th, the $10,000 loan is repaid, in full, with interest, Exhibit C, the bank wire confirmation. Another line. 10:05 a.m., November 8th, a termination of interim authority and release of all claims is signed and notarized by Marla Rowan. Her authority, her signature, her involvement in Echelon Properties is as of this moment, legally and permanently extinguished. Exhibit D. Elijah paused, letting the screen refresh. A list began to populate the screen. Mariner House, Granite Wharf Lofts, the Slate Street Portfolio, the Meridian Tower, every single asset, every brick, every deed in the Echelon portfolio was acquired after this date, after Ms. Rowan signed away her temporary, long-expired role. There is no family business to be ousted from. There is only Ms. Burke's business, and Ms. Rowan, a legal stranger, attempting to claim it through fraud. Danforth was on his feet. Objection. Counsel is testifying. Counsel is reading his exhibit list. Mr. Danforth, the judge snapped. Sit down. We call Dr. Eris Thorne, Elijah said. Our forensic document examiner was a small, precise man who radiated an almost joyful confidence. He took the stand. Marla's ancient interim document appeared on the screen, magnified 500 times. It is, to be blunt, a patchwork, Dr. Thorne said, adjusting his glasses. A complete and rather amateurish fabrication. He pointed. First, the notary seal. You can see the embossed number. We have a sworn affidavit from the notary, Ms. Agnes Peel, that this specific seal number expired 2 years before the date on the document itself. She never signed this. Second, the ink, he continued, a new image popping up. The signature of Ms. Rowan is in a modern, non-archival ink, consistent with a ballpoint pen manufactured in the last 12 months. But the most definitive proof, Dr. Thorne said, clearly enjoying himself, are the microdots. A new image, a microscopic spray of tiny yellow dots, invisible to the naked eye. Modern professional printers embed these tracking dots. They tell us the serial number of the machine and the date and time of the print. This decade-old document was, in fact, printed 4 weeks ago at a FedEx office on a Xerox machine model 7800. A machine, Your Honor, that was not manufactured until 4 years after this document was supposedly signed. The courtroom was silent. Marla was staring at Danforth, her eyes wide with panic. Danforth was scribbling, his face tight. The forgery was not just an allegation. It was a scientific fact. We call Miss Julian Hayes, Elijah said. The maitre d' from the Gilded Heron, impeccably dressed, took the stand. He recounted what he had heard Marla say to Dylan before I arrived. She said, "Push her hard enough, and she'll fold. She always folds." "Objection!" Danforth roared. "Hearsay! Irrelevant!" "It speaks directly to motive and a conspiracy to extort, Your Honor," Elijah said. "Overruled," the judge said. "I'll allow it." "And then, Your Honor," Elijah said, "we present Exhibit F, the audio-video recording from the restaurant's security system, with a certified, unbroken chain of custody." The screens lit up, the wine room, my own voice, cold and clear. Why did you use a fraudulent document to attempt a hostile takeover of my building? We watched Marla's face twist. We heard her shrill lies. "We built Echelon. We are the co-founders." And then, the lunge. The crack of the slap echoed in the dead-silent courtroom. We saw my head snap back. We saw her face, not a victim's, but a mask of pure, violent rage. Marla let out a small, strangled sob and buried her face in her hands. It was not a plea for sympathy. It was the sound of a performer whose mask had been melted off. "We call Mr. Quinn," Elijah said. Quinn walked to the stand. His guilt was gone. It had been replaced by a cold, hard anger. He looked at the judge. "I made a mistake, Your Honor. I failed my company. I let them in." "Why?" Elijah asked. "Because Ms. Rowan manipulated me. She exploited my position. She knew I was new. She knew the Rowan name carried weight. She presented that document," he pointed at the forgery, "and she sold me a story about a family surprise. She didn't just trespass. She intentionally, and with malice, deceived me to gain illegal access. And what has Echelon done since this breach? Quinn's posture changed. He was no longer the victim, he was the expert. We have instituted a full biometric lockdown, retina, fingerprint, and 2 keycard protocols for all secure areas, including utility closets. All guest access is now logged, verified, and requires a direct, physical escort. The vulnerability Ms. Rowan exploited has been permanently sealed. It will not happen again. It was Danforth's turn. He knew the facts were a graveyard. He had to pivot back to emotion. He approached Quinn. Mr. Quinn, you were terrified, weren't you? Afraid for your job? Afraid of Ms. Burke, a woman we've heard is volatile? Objection, Elijah said, not even standing. Counsel is testifying. Sustained. Mr. Danforth, your television interviews are not evidence. Danforth flushed. He turned, gesturing to me. This is a woman who is so unstable, so emotionally compromised, that her own mother— Objection. Elijah was on his feet. Counsel is inflammatory. He is characterizing my client's reaction to a criminal assault as a cause for it. It is desperate, and it is beneath this court. Sustained. The judge's voice cracked like a whip. Move on, Mr. Danforth, and I am warning you, do not test my patience again. Danforth was floundering, trying to ask Quinn about server room protocols, when the heavy main doors of the courtroom opened. It was not a sound. It was a change in pressure. August. Rowan slipped into the back row. He wore a dark gray suit, his posture perfect. He did not look at me. He did not look at Marla. He simply sat, folded his hands over his cane, and observed. The entire room felt it. Marla, who had been whispering furiously to Danforth, went rigid. She looked back, saw him, and all the color drained from her face. He was not there to support her. He was there to watch. Elijah, who had clocked his entrance without missing a beat, continued. Your Honor, we have one final piece of evidence. It does not relate to Echelon Properties, but directly to the plaintiff's motive for this entire fraudulent action. We call Mr. Alistair Hayes, Elijah said. A crisp, 60-something man in a pinstripe suit took the stand. Mr. Hayes, Elijah said, you are the lead counsel for the Rowan Family Trust? I am. Can you identify this document? It is the active Rowan Family Trust Charter. Danforth was on his feet. Objection. Irrelevant. A private family trust has absolutely no bearing on this corporate injunction. It has everything to do with it, Your Honor, Elijah said, his voice dropping. It proves that Ms. Rowan's claim is not just a fraud, but an act of financial desperation. It proves the motive for the crime. Judge Alvarez looked at Danforth, then his eyes flicked, just for a second, to the back of the room where August sat, immobile. Overruled, the judge said. I want to hear this. Mr. Hayes, Elijah said, could you please read, for the court, Article 9, Section 4, Beneficiary Conduct. Mr. Hayes put on his glasses. He read, any beneficiary who, willfully and with malice, attempts to defraud, defame, or otherwise cause material harm to another beneficiary or their wholly owned assets, shall be found in breach of their fiduciary duty to the trust. He continued, upon such a finding, the trustees may, at their sole discretion, suspend any and all distributions, benefits, and claims for said beneficiary for a period not to exceed 5 years. The words dropped like anchors into the silence. Marla was shaking her head, whispering, no, no, no. Danforth was staring, slack-jawed. He had just realized his entire case, his entire payday, was built on a trap his client had set for herself. Mr. Hayes? Elijah asked. To your knowledge, has Ms. Marla Rowan violated this clause? Objection, Danforth shrieked. Calls for a legal conclusion. Sustained, the judge said, but the text speaks for itself. Mr. North, the court has taken judicial notice of the clause and its implications. Your Honor, Danforth was frantic. "I move to exclude this trust document. It is prejudicial. It is—" "Denied counsel," the judge said, his voice flat. He took off his glasses. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. He looked at Rex Danforth. "Mr. Danforth," the judge began, his voice dangerously quiet. "You came into my chambers, ex parte. You asked for an extraordinary remedy. You asked me to freeze the assets of a major corporation, based on what you presented as a legitimate dispute." He picked up the forgery report. "I now find that your entire case is predicated on a document that is a provable, amateurish fraud. You presented a social media video as proof, and I now find it was propaganda for a criminal trespass. You painted your client as a victim, and I have now watched, in high definition, as she committed an unprovoked battery against the defendant." He laced his fingers. "The plaintiff's evidence is not just weak, Mr. Danforth. It is irrevocably contaminated. The entire claim is an act of malice." He looked at Marla. Her eyes were wide, unblinking, locked on him. "The plaintiff's request for a preliminary injunction is denied. The entire case," he said, "is dismissed, with prejudice." He looked at Elijah. "Mr. North, your motion for sanctions is granted. You will have your fees. I will see the full motion on my desk by Monday." Bam! The gavel cracked. It was not an ending. It was a sound of impact. The sound of a new order being hammered, permanently, into place. The gavel was a period, a full stop, the sound of a door slamming shut, locking from the inside. In the chaos of the courtroom, Danforth scrambling, Marla's performative sobs turning genuine and ugly, Dylan looking green, Elijah simply, methodically, began repacking his binders. The victory was so total, so absolute, it felt silent. By the time we reached the elevator, Jessa Klein's phone had already chimed. She looked at the alert, her face impassive. "The clerk filed the order electronically. The vacatur is live. The freeze is gone." She was already dialing. "David," she said into her phone. "Jessa Klein, you'll see the court order on docket 739. The freeze on account 4492 is lifted. Effective immediately. Initiate the wire for the Granite Wharf closing. The full tranche. Yes, now." She hung up. "The machine is back on," she said. The dominoes did not just stop falling, they reversed. The pressure that had been designed to crush me, to suffocate my liquidity, now snapped back on its creators with astonishing force. The first call was from Michael at Meridian Trust. His voice, once strained, was now a river of warm syrup. "Leslie, I was monitoring the docket. Congratulations. What an ordeal, and what a win." "Thank you, Michael. The wire is moving. We'll close Granite Wharf on time." "About that," he said, and I could hear the smile. "Leslie, I'll be frank. We were impressed by your data room. We were horrified by the fraud you uncovered. The board had a meeting this morning, anticipating this outcome. A company that can survive an internal assault of this magnitude, this cleanly, is not a risk. It's a fortress. We are, as a gesture of confidence, lowering your rate on the Granite Wharf package by 25 basis points. The new term sheet will be on your desk in an hour." He had not just given me my money, he had given me a discount. My resilience had become a bankable asset. The next call was to Mark, my contractor. "Mark, it's Leslie. The judge dismissed the case. The accounts are unfrozen. Your payment, and all back pay for your men, is being wired as we speak. It will clear by end of day." There was a long exhale on the other end. "Thank God, Leslie. We saw the news about the forgery, the slap. Jesus. Listen, I talked to my suppliers. The guys you and your lawyer spoke to on that conference call, they're all in. We're waiving all late fees. We're waiving the delay penalties. We're glad you're the one signing the checks." Goodwill. The pressure had reversed, and in its place was respect. The public narrative, the one Danforth had poisoned, was the next to flip. The Riverton Rising blog, the one that had printed the daughter deletes stepmother story, posted a new headline by noon. It was not a retraction. It was a desperate act of self-preservation. Judge finds malice and forgery in Rowan claim against Echelon Properties. The story was a complete reversal. It detailed the forensic evidence of microdots, the expired notary seal, and quoted the judge's ruling of a case predicated on a provable amateurish fraud. My proof not posture data room had become their new, unimpeachable source. Rex Danforth, a man known for his media bravado, was reduced to a whimper. He released a 2-sentence statement to the financial press. My client, Ms. Rowan, was operating under a profound misunderstanding of decade-old documents. We respectfully disagree with the court's findings, but will not be appealing at this time. He's not appealing, Elijah said, reading the statement in my office. He's signaling to the Bar Association that he's dropping her. He's claiming he was misled to save his own license. Marla's world, the one built on the illusion of Rowan power and social grace, evaporated. The story of the slap, the video of the slap, had ripped through her social circle. It was not the fraud that undid her. It was the public display of violence. It was tacky. It was desperate. She was no longer a matriarch. She was a pariah. The final, fatal blow was not delivered by me. It was a leak, an email, from Marla to one of the aunts, sent the week before the invasion. I just need to recreate the old agreement, the one Leslie forgot about. It's not really forgery if it's what we all know should have happened. It's just correcting the record. It's just enough to get her to the table. The leak, anonymous and devastating, proved her intent. Her social life was over. Dylan's, too. He finally understood that this was not a game. His entire Instagram presence vanished. The video of the celebration, the triumphant selfie, the post mocking Elijah's cease and desist letter, all deleted, scrubbed from the internet. Elijah, who had archived every single post, just shrugged. A deletion is an admission. We have the screenshots. We'll add it to the file for the libel suit, if you ever want to file it. I shook my head. We don't need to. He's gone. The war was over. Now, I had to rebuild the fortress, and I had to brand the victory. My team, Elijah, Jessa, Sal, and Quinn, met in the conference room. The whiteboard, once covered in risks, was now a blank slate. This happened, I said, because a vulnerability existed, a personal, emotional vulnerability that they tried to translate into a legal and financial one. We are sealing it, forever. Sal, Quinn, I said, the new security protocols, they are permanent, biometrics on all server rooms and contract vaults, and we are adding a 2-key protocol for any change in legal status, any document that has to do with ownership or authority. It will require my biometric signature and the encrypted, verified signature of either Elijah or Jessa. No exceptions. Nothing with my name on it ever gets misunderstood again. Quinn nodded, his face set. He had transformed his guilt into zeal. Already done, Ms. Burke. Jessa spoke next. The financials are stable. Granite Wharf is closed. The new line of credit at Meridian, the ghost account, is now formalized as our permanent liquidity buffer. If anyone ever tries to freeze our main account again, we will not be breathing underwater. We will be in the penthouse. Then, I turned to the final piece, the narrative. They used a false narrative to attack us, I said to Elijah. We will use the true narrative to armor us. We are publishing a white paper. Elijah's eyes lit up. A case study. Exactly, I said. Echelon Properties will publish a white paper on corporate governance. We'll call it Boundaries Build Futures, Protecting Private Enterprise from Familial Entanglement. We did not name Marla. We did not name Dylan. We did not have to. We laid it out in cold corporate prose. We discussed the dangers of speculative claims, the legal definition of fiduciary duty, the risks of verbal partnerships, and the critical necessity of notarized termination agreements for all non-equity roles. We included an anonymous case study of a document fabrication being identified by forensic microdot analysis. We published it. We sent it to every financial journal, every business school, and every bank in the state. It was downloaded over 10,000 times in 48 hours. It became a required reading in ethics courses. I had not just won a lawsuit. I had become the public expert on how to win it. I had turned the attack into my brand. A week later, the final domino fell. A single, heavy, cream-colored card arrived on my desk. No postage. It had been hand-delivered. Lunch, 12 p.m., the club. It was not signed, but it did not need to be. August. The club was silent, a tomb of old money and older secrets. He was in his usual private room, at his usual table. He did not stand when I entered. "Leslie," he said. A waiter poured me a water. We ate. We did not speak of the court case. We did not speak of Marla, or Dylan, or my father. He asked me about the bond market in Singapore. I asked him about steel futures. It was a conversation between two equals, two operators. When the plates were cleared, he gestured to the small table in the corner. A chessboard was set. "White," he said. I moved my pawn. He moved his. We played in absolute, focused silence for 20 minutes. His game, as always, was a web of traps, feints, and aggressive sacrifices. My game was methodical. I built defenses. I controlled the center. I saw the trap coming. A bishop sacrifice designed to expose my king and force a trade of my queen. It was a classic August Rowan move. Brilliant, costly, and designed to win at all costs. I did not take the bishop. I did not fall for the bait. I moved my rook, a simple straight-line move. It slid across the board, defending the pawn, supporting the knight, and locking down the entire flank. It was not a brilliant move. It was just an unbreakable one. My grandfather stared at the board. He looked at my rook, standing like a tower, a silent, immovable fact. He looked at the trap he had set, and how my simple, direct move had not just avoided it, but diffused it entirely. He looked up from the board, and his gaze met mine. His eyes, usually so cold and analytical, were something else. Not pride, not warmth, recognition. He gave a single, sharp nod, the same nod from the courtroom. Then he stood. "The check is handled," he said, and he walked out of the room. It was the only validation I needed. That evening, I stood on the roof of Mariner House, the building she had tried to steal, the one that had been the epicenter of the war. The city glittered below, a sea of potential. I thought about the origin of the fight, that $10,000, the favor that Marla had tried to twist into a hook, a weapon of control. I thought about the community microfund that had given me my real start. I picked up my phone. I called Jessa. "I'm starting a new entity," I said. "A non-profit? A foundation?" "A fellowship," I corrected. "We're calling it the Slate Street Fellowship." "Funded by?" "A percentage of the net operating income from Mariner House, permanently. The building they tried to take would now fund the very thing they feared, independent women." "What's the mission?" Jessa asked. "We mentor young women entering real estate and finance. We provide seed capital. But more importantly, we provide the armor. We provide the legal and corporate structuring services. We teach them, from day one, how to build their own ironclad operating agreements, how to protect their equity, how to read the fine print." I looked out at the city. "I'm not just going to mentor them," I said. "I'm going to make sure they never, ever need a favor from anyone." The first hearing had been the demolition. This final appearance, the one to formally address our motion for sanctions, was not a hearing. It was a cleanup. It was the moment the judge's verbal orders were forged into permanent, undeniable ink. Rex Danforth was gone. He had, according to the official filing, withdrawn as counsel due to an irreconcilable conflict. I pictured him scrubbing his name from any association with the case. Marla and Dylan sat alone at the plaintiff's table, looking small, pale, and hollowed out. My father. I noted with a distant, cold sadness, was not present. He had made his choice. Elijah stood. He did not waste time on theatricality. He addressed the bench. "Your Honor," he said, his voice crisp, "in light of the court's previous findings of malice, conspiracy, and fraud upon this very court, we move for dismissal with prejudice." The two most important words, with prejudice, this meant it was over, forever. It could never be refiled, never be resurrected. It was a legal kill shot. "Furthermore," Elijah continued, "we petition for sanctions. We ask the court to order the plaintiff, Ms. Marla Rowan, to reimburse the defendant, Echelon Properties, for the full and complete costs of this defense, including all expert and attorney's fees, as a direct consequence of her fraudulent actions." He placed the final binder on his table. "And finally, Your Honor, we petition for a permanent injunction, a gag order, barring Marla Rowan, Dylan Rowan, and any of their agents, permanently and in all jurisdictions, from speaking, posting, publishing, or otherwise disseminating any false, misleading, or defamatory information regarding Ms. Burke, Echelon Properties, or any of its assets." Judge Alvarez looked at Marla. His face was granite. He had been personally lied to, his office used in an ex parte ambush, and his patience was gone. "Mr. North, your motions are granted, in full." He turned his gaze to Marla. She visibly flinched. "The case is dismissed. With prejudice, Ms. Rowan, you will pay the defendant's full, itemized legal fees. Mr. North will submit the bill. You have 90 days to comply." He leaned forward. "And a permanent injunction is hereby issued. This is not a suggestion. This is the order of this court. If you so much as like a defamatory post, if you whisper a rumor at a dinner party, if you have a friend leak a story, I will find you in contempt, and you will find that the consequences for contempt are far more severe than a financial penalty. Are we clear?" Marla, her voice a reedy whisper, just said, "Yes, Your Honor." Bam! The gavel cracked. It was a final dry snap, the sound of a lock turning. But it was not the last gavel to fall. The second one fell 3 days later. It was not in the chaos of the civil court, but in the hushed, old-money silence of the probate court, the court that oversaw the Rowan family trust. I was there, with Elijah. August, my grandfather, was there, sitting in the front row, observing. Marla was there, with a new, cheaper lawyer who looked perpetually out of his depth. The trust's counsel, Mr. Hayes, was efficient. He did not need to relitigate the case. He simply presented the official findings from Judge Alvarez's court. The finding of malice, the finding of fraud, the finding of forgery. He presented the Gilded Heron video as evidence of intentional harm. He read Article 9, Section 4, the trap. The probate judge, a man who had managed the Rowan fortune for 20 years, did not deliberate. He read the clause. He looked at the evidence of Marla's breach. He triggered the penalty. The court finds Marla Rowan in definitive breach of her fiduciary duty to the Rowan family trust, he said, his voice as dry as old paper. The suspension clause, as written by the grantor, is hereby activated. All distributions, benefits, rights, and claims to which Miss Rowan was entitled are suspended. Marla's new lawyer shot to his feet. For how long, Your Honor? The clause is discretionary. The judge looked at the charter. The clause states, a period not to exceed 5 years. The trustees, he glanced at August, who remained impassive, will revisit this matter in 5 years. 5 years, no trust income, no access, no safety net. She had gambled her entire future on a fraudulent document, and the house had called her bluff. As we filed out, Marla stopped. She was standing in the aisle, her face ashen, looking at August. She looked as if she was about to plead, to beg, to dissolve into the tears that had once been her greatest weapon. My grandfather, who had not looked at her once, paused. He turned his head, his hand on his cane. but he did not look at Marla. He looked at me. His gaze was steady. It was not warm, not proud, not even approving. It was clear. It was the gaze of recognition. "Leslie," he said, his voice quiet, for my ears only. "Some people inherit money. Some people inherit responsibility." He nodded once, a short, sharp gesture. "Do not confuse the two." He turned and walked away, his cane tapping on the marble floor, leaving her standing there, a ghost in a courtroom, a woman who had just ceased to exist in any way that mattered. The moment I stepped outside the courthouse, the cameras were on me. The media, having smelled the blood from the first hearing, had gathered in force. A wall of microphones was shoved in my face. "Ms. Burke, what's your reaction? Leslie, how does this affect your family? What do you say to the forgery claims? What did your grandfather say to you?" I stopped. I looked directly into the cameras, the same ones Rex Danforth had used to call me volatile, the same ones Dylan had used to post his lies. I was not going to give them a performance. I was not going to feed the monster. I was going to end the story. I said one sentence, just one. "Paper tells the truth." I did not smile. I did not look angry. I simply stated the fact. And then I walked, straight-backed, through the sea of shouting reporters and got into my car. The war was over. The next day, I called a full board meeting for Echelon Properties, my board, the one I had recently restructured to include Jessa and Elijah. "First order of business," I announced. "We are moving our headquarters, effective immediately. The Echelon Corporate HQ will be the top 3 floors of Mariner House." It was a statement. The building they tried to steal, the one they had invaded, was now the throne. "Second," I continued, "our transparency portal, the proof, not posture, data room. It is no longer a crisis tool. It is a permanent feature. We are launching a public-facing portal for all our tenants, investors, and banking partners, showing real-time updates on our corporate governance, our financing, and our compliance. We were attacked because they thought we had secrets, that we were vulnerable. We will now be the most transparent firm in the state. Our greatest vulnerability will now be our brand. It will be our armor." That afternoon, I commissioned a new plaque. It was cast in solid, polished bronze. We installed it in the main lobby of Mariner House, right where Marla's cheap, sagging vinyl banner had hung. It was simple. It said, "Boundaries build futures." I called Quinn into my office. He entered, as he always did now, with a kind of nervous, over-prepared energy. He had been walking on eggshells for weeks, even after his testimony. He looked terrified I was finally going to fire him. "Quinn," I said, "your affidavit, your willingness to testify about your own mistake, was a critical piece of our defense. But more importantly, the new biometric protocols you designed with Sal are, frankly, brilliant." He looked confused. "Thank you, Ms. Burke." "Your mistake," I said, leaning forward, "the one that let Marla in, happened because you respected a family assumption over a security procedure. You have now learned, in the most painful and public way possible, that procedure is the only thing that matters. You are the only person in this company who truly understands that in their bones." I slid a new folder across the desk. "I'm promoting you. We're creating a new executive position, Chief Compliance Officer. Your entire job is to be the no man. Your job is to audit our protocols, to enforce our boundaries, and to ensure that a breach like this, on any level, legal, financial, or physical, can never, ever happen again. The mistake that almost sank us is now your shield, and you are now our shield." He looked at the folder, at the title. He looked up at me, and for the first time since the invasion, the guilt finally left his eyes. He stood up straight. "Yes, Ms. Burke, I can do that." Granite Wharf Lofts opened 2 months later. It was a massive success. The press, now fully on our side, called it a masterpiece of urban renewal. We held the opening party in the new community art space on the ground floor, the same space Dylan had measured for his studio. It was beautiful, filled with light, and the walls were covered in the work of a brilliant young sculptor. She was the first ever recipient of the Slate Street Fellowship, the foundation I had created to fund and armor women entering the field. There was no sign of Dylan. The last I heard, he was working in the shipping department of a distant cousin's logistics company in another state. One last envelope arrived at my office. It was cheap, thin, drugstore paper. The return address was a rented post office box. The handwriting was Marla's, shaky and unfamiliar. I almost threw it away, but I opened it. It was a single sheet, torn from a notepad. It was not an apology. It was not a plea for money. It was not an accusation. It was just 5 words. I just wanted to be remembered. I stared at the words, the sheer, pathetic, hollow sadness of it, the toxic ambition. She had wanted a legacy so badly that she had destroyed her own. She had wanted to be remembered as a founder, and now, thanks to the court records, she would only be remembered as a fraud. I did not reply. I did not feel anger. I did not feel pity. I felt nothing. She was irrelevant. She was paper. I folded the note. I put it in my desk drawer, in the file labeled Correspondence Handled. I did not need to open it again. The final image, it's the one I return to, the one that defines the entire story. Me, standing on the roof garden of Mariner House at sunset. The Riverton skyline is blazing, a sea of fire and gold. The city is bright, laid out beneath me, a map of my own making, my own victories. On the small table next to me, there is a chessboard. The pieces are set in their final position from my game with August, my rook, the one I had moved, standing like a tower, guarding the center. His king, trapped on the back rank, a quiet, undeniable checkmate. And in that moment, I finally understood his word. Interesting. He had not been surprised by the violence of the slap. Violence was common. Greed was common. He had seen it all 1,000 times. He had been watching me, his granddaughter, the one he had always dismissed as soft, like my mother. He was watching to see if I would do what my father always did, if I would fold, if I would plead, if I would cry, if I would try to keep the peace at any cost. When I took the hit, when I did not cry, when I did not scream, when I did not crumble, when I just absorbed the blow and my eyes promised war, that was what he found interesting. It was not surprise. It was recognition. It was the moment he realized the rook had finally made it to the other side of the board. It was the moment he saw his own steel reflected back. It was the moment he knew I was not glass, and that I would never, ever fold. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I am so curious. Where are you tuning in from? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to connect and hear your thoughts on this. Please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories. Give this video a like, and if you really loved it, please support us by hitting that hype button. It really helps get these stories out to more people.